Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I invite everyone to join Council in O Canada by rising and joining in on the song. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. I will now give our opening prayer, followed by our moment of silent reflection, at which time we'll begin the meeting proper. God, grant us understanding and patience that justice, truth, and honesty may be evident in our decisions. Make us mindful of the needs of the people throughout the town of Oakville. Help us govern with the wider community in mind, and so create in us a desire for progress and responsible action. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you, everyone. I see we have no regrets. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. Council, you have your minutes before you. How do you wish to proceed? Councillor Johnston? Councillor Johnston moves adoption of the minutes. Oh, we need a seconder. Councillor Robinson, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The minutes are adopted. There are no public presentations on our agenda and no delegations. And you have your standing committee reports. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move them and ask for item 3 on the Admin Services Committee to be separated.
Item 3 is separated. Councillor Duddick moves the others. Is there a seconder? Councillor Khan. Any discussion, other separations? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The balance are adopted. Councillor Duddick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a discussion at the Admin Services Committee. It was in regards to the continuation of the town crier. And it was a very close vote. And as a result, I would like to see if there's any, what shall I say, support at the council level for retaining this. I know that the motion made at ASC was to do away with it and discontinue it, and that has to be defeated first. But I would look to maybe asking my other colleagues on council for their support. I think it's a very, very small amount of money that we're asking for, and it's something that, although it's not a long-standing tradition, it's a tradition nonetheless. And I think it merits our retaining it for the amount of enjoyment people within the community have in regards to the program.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Councillor Duddick for separating the item this evening. I'm going to also support Councillor Duddick's suggestion that this motion be voted down. I think that one of the things that is important in this town, and we've seen this over and over again in our citizen surveys, and even just from a matter of talking to members of our community, one of the things that our residents most love about Oakville is the small town feeling, the village atmosphere, the history, the quaintness, and the more we, I guess, chisel away at that, the less opportunity there is to maintain those traditions. I draw your attention to an item which is on the agenda this evening, which is the results of the citizen satisfaction survey. On page 2 of that document, I think it is, the question is, what are the qualities or features of the town of Oakville that make it livable? Number 1 is small town, community, family atmosphere. And I can't really think of another, program of that, I guess, small monetary cost and ease of operation and one that is so non-taxing to our resources as the Town Crier program to help promote those very values, the small town values, the village atmosphere, the history, and just that ambiance that we're trying to promote in our community. Councillor Duddick touched on the cost. This is a very, very, very low-cost program. The cost of the competition was $2,000. I suspect we could probably do it for less. If we had the Town Crier competition right in these council chambers, we could probably do it for free. The cost of $4,000 for the new uniform, again, that's over the course of the lifespan, I shouldn't say the lifespan of the crier, but the term of the crier. So if the crier's here for 4 years or if the crier's here for 14 years, that $4,000 doesn't really doesn't change. So, I mean, we may or may not even have that extra fee. So for the very paltry cost, this is a feel-good program that I've really heard no crying demand to eliminate here at the town. No crying demand. That's a good pun. I'm a poet and didn't even know it. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Any other discussion? Councillor Byrd.
As the third member of the administrative support committee that I guess the minority opinion right now, and I share with the previous 2 speakers, I really question what kind of message this is trying to send. We call ourselves the town crier. We're trying to save an event that really, other than as I say, or a function that other than having the town run the contest, I guess, of who is going to be the official town crier, and buying the costume that we picked and we think is appropriate for the town's representative, then it's hands off. It's not a staff position. It's not taking it away from anyone other than creating, as you say, the small town feel, throwback. It's part of, as I mentioned at the town, at the committee, I thought it's part of our DNA. I have not heard the position of town crier or not having a town crier being a problem with anyone. We've had various town criers. Some have been, as I say, more adept at it than others, but as I say, the idea of having a town crier has certainly not ever been mentioned to me that this is a position that we shouldn't have filled. And so I'm in favor of what's going forward. I'll give the opportunity for the rest of the members of council to share their opinion whether it should be discontinued or not.
Councillor Giddings, would you please take the chair? Thank you. I supported option 3 at ASC because option 3 was not to kill the crier, but rather, in my mind, to stop competing with the Oakville Historical Society, which also provides a town crier. So in no way do I consider that we're losing anything here. Rather, I see us as pulling back from competing with our very own Oakville Historical Society. And that's why I supported the option 3 at ASC. And Acting Mayor Giddings, as you have the chair, I'd like to move the item 3 and look for a seconder. It has to be defeated in any event, so someone's got to second it if you wish to substitute. Thank you.
So we'll now vote Mayor Bertrand's motion to separate.
No. To do
To pass item 3.
which was to discontinue.
Which is to discontinue with the town crier program. All in favor? Opposed? Your motion passes.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings, for your assistance. That brings us now to Committee of the Whole, and I wonder if we could have a mover and a seconder to resolve into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Khan, all in favor? Opposed, if any? We are now resolved into Committee of the Whole. The first item is a consent item where an agreement between Oakville Hydro and the town of Oakville for an easement through part of the lands of Queen Elizabeth Park Community Center for the installation of new electrical services be approved, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the agreement, and that the town solicitor be authorized to make minor modifications that do not affect the substance of the agreement. Councillor Johnston? Councillor Johnston moves it. Is there discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? It is carried. Council, it's now with some pleasure that I invite your attention to a presentation from the Halton Regional Police Service. The weighty recommendation before you is that you receive their report after they've presented it. But for now, I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Fletcher to take the podium. And for the next few minutes, the police will educate you on the many interesting things that they have going on for our safety and protection. And you will have a better understanding when they're done of why we are the safest community in the country. Deputy Chief Fletcher?
Thank you, Worship.
The floor is yours, and I don't be concerned about any technical delays. It happens to everybody.
Thank you, Worship, and I'm being assisted by this fine young man here who's going to bring the presentation up shortly. Just before I do begin, I'd like to recognize a couple of members that are here with us to council. First, my name is Andrew Fletcher. I'm the Deputy Chief of Administration. I appear before you on behalf of Chief Gary Kroll, who unfortunately can't be here tonight because he's in Trinidad Tobago. Not on vacation. He's actually part of a delegation of police leaders. He joins Commissioner Chris Lewis from the OPP and some representatives from Toronto Police Service and others that are down there assisting with training the Trinidad Tobago Police on community policing initiatives, which they are struggling with in their country. So, otherwise, he would, I'm sure, be here this evening. I'm joined by Superintendent Marty Power, who's our commander of number 2 district here in Oakville, and also in our audience is Mr. Paul Laverne, who's our director of corporate services and a resident of Oakville, so happened to catch me on the way out the door and asked if he could attend this evening. So for those that have appeared before regional council and have heard the budget presentation from the chief in the past, you may find a bit of what I'm referring to repetitive. However, as I've alluded to in previous presentations and once through Milton Council, I am really the opening act for the main event, which is really Superintendent Power, who will talk to you about some of the great initiatives that are going on within the town of Oakville. I'm here really to just to provide a bit of an overview of what's happening in a regional perspective. So hopefully this goes as planned. The police service is guided by a 3-year business plan, which is a plan that was revisited earlier this year and in the past 6 months. And it was a plan that was actually initiated through the board and supported by Superintendent Power and myself 3 years ago when we commenced the 2008 to 2010 business plan. That plan has been refreshed and revised through consultation with our community, with our police service as a whole, and through the number of other interest groups and stakeholders. And we're proud to say that the key for our next 3 years in our business plan continues to be, as this appears on the screen, community safety, one of communication and dialogue, enhancing our organizational capacity, and focusing on our organizational excellence. Each of the commanders is then given the business plan in which to work on, and through consultation refines that business plan to establish some goals and objectives within their specific working areas in support of those themes. The themes remain the same, as I mentioned, but the commanders, as is highlighted in this slide, focus on very targeted programs to address traffic enforcement, youth and senior issues throughout our community, which are the primary goals for our service over the next year. We also continue to look for ways to enhance our communication and dialogue, both internally and externally, and through presentations such as what we're offering to you this evening, that goes a long way for us to reach out to the communities and share the information about some of the work that we are doing. We continue to deliver what we believe is an effective and efficient police service in an environment that is seen as that is seen in a continued population growth and a growth and diversity within the towns that we police. We are seeing an increase in the number of calls for service each year across the region, and along with an increasing demand for our police services to support a number of community initiatives through both the use of on-duty and pay-duty resources and staffing of special events and community activities. We continue to do this with one of the lowest police-to-population ratios and the lowest cost per capita ratios across the province. And while we continue to do this, we continue to invest in a number of infrastructure projects, such as our current regional radio replacement project, an $18 million joint police and emergency services project to provide radio support to our emergency service providers, and also the opening of our new station last summer here in the town of Oakville, one of the brain trusts of Superintendent Power, which I know he's going to speak of in a little bit. You no doubt have heard the Chief and a number of our members of our service refer to it as Halton as being one of the safest regions in all of Canada. And although we're off to a little bit of a tough start this year with 5 homicides in the region, we consider that a blip in our stats. But when we speak of being the safest regional municipality, I wanted to show you by way of this slide how we compare to other similar sized regions and cities in Ontario by way of the Crime Severity Index. And I'm assuming that most of you are familiar with the Crime Severity Index, but that's a schematic that's used consistently across the country using a very mathematical approach to identify the severity of crimes and how they're handled by the police service of jurisdiction. And as you will see from the slides, we continue to be substantially lower than the provincial and the national average. And as was mentioned by Councillor Knoll earlier, it actually is consistent with what was being recognized by your 2011 citizen survey, which is referenced tonight as one of the 3 characteristics that make Oakville livable by feeling safe and one of a low crime rate, so we're quite proud of that. However, having said all that, from an overall crime severity index perspective, we show quite well, but we are seeing some increases in our 2010 statistics for reported crime. We saw a 3.8% increase compared to 2009 to 2010 statistics in overall crime rate, and that's both violent and nonviolent crimes. And overall, we saw a 3.7% increase in violent crimes throughout the region and a 4.7% increase in property crime. By any means not alarming, but something that we continue to look at for a number of reasons, most logically because of the growth within the community and the increase in the reported crimes. But we continue to look at the causes and do continued analysis through our crime analysts and district analysts to allow us to focus our resources accordingly to address those needs. But as our fight against crime continues, so does our other public safety initiatives, and it's not all about crime, with our primary focus being on traffic, not just through enforcement, which you see on a daily basis throughout your municipality, by working with our many community partners to educate the public about the importance of safe driving habits, and by working with our municipal partners and our regional partners to review road engineering and design to look for joint ways in which we can slow people down and make our roads safer, because that seems to be a continuing theme that we hear when we go out to consultation with the public, and I know the councillors here are very alive to that. As I mentioned in the earlier slides, we do all this and attempt to remain to provide, our primary goal remains to provide effective and efficient policing services to the community. But we are proud to say that we do this with one of the lowest police to population ratios and one of the lowest cost per capita ratios while calls continue to increase, with our ultimate goal is to keep Halton as safe tomorrow as it is today. But as I mentioned in the opening remarks, the main event is really Superintendent Power, and I now ask that he come forward just to provide you with a number of slides that speak to some of the great work that's going on specifically here in the town of Oakville to deliver on our commitment to the citizens here. Thank you for your time.
Superintendent Power, welcome. I know that council joins me in considering you to be the Oakville Chief, so we look forward to your information about the District of Oakville.
Thank you, Your Worship. That sounds like a pretty heavy title to live up to. Good evening, everybody, councillors, town staff, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come here tonight and provide you with, you just heard from the deputy in regards to more of a regional perspective, and my goal here is to give you a bit more of a local perspective in regards to the town of Oakville. You'll see the slide in front of you. That is a picture of our new station. We moved from being your neighbor right next door here to our new location up on Oak Walk Drive, 95 Oak Walk Drive. We moved in there in March of last year. Some of you have been up there. Some of you joined us in the official opening, but you're always welcome to come up and see our new facility. It's a 70,000 square foot facility on 4.3 acres. I know we had some consultation with council here when we were developing that location in regards to how the facility should sit on property and so on. So we appreciated input from some councillors in that regard. Our station up there, it looks like a large building, and as I said, it is 70,000 square feet. But we house almost 300 Halton Regional Police employees in that building. 140 of those are district staff, so staff, mostly uniformed police officers that patrol and police the town of Oakville, along with some support civilians. But also in that building we have approximately 150, just over 150 regional investigative staff that have come from our headquarters over on Brawny Road, including our drugs, guns and gangs, our mobile surveillance people, our domestic violence unit, our child abuse and sexual assault unit, our training bureau is there as well in the basement. So it is a big building, but it is full, and our hopes are, as we require the space here in Oakville, then those units will be moving off to another facility. Just to give you a brief idea of how the district organizational structure is, the district is led by myself as the district commander. I have an inspector in charge of operations. That inspector is ultimately responsible for the day-to-day operations of our patrol division. The patrol division is divided up into four platoons. Each platoon has a staff sergeant commanded by a staff sergeant and two sergeants, and numerous patrol officers. They work a 24/7, 12-hour shift schedule and are on the streets patrolling the town of Oakville. Also under the operations inspector is a district response unit. The district response unit has 6 officers that are dedicated to traffic initiatives, traffic issues, along with 3 village constables, which most of you are familiar with, that work out in the community, as well as our community support officer. On the other side of the house is the detective sergeant of our criminal investigation bureau. Our criminal investigation bureau is made up of 5 teams, 2 property teams, one taking on a majority of house break-and-enters, business break-and-enters, schools, and so on. The other property team looking after stolen autos, theft, large thefts, and those type of things. And then we have 2 other teams, our persons teams, and they are looking after our robberies, looking after serious assaults, sudden deaths, and those types of investigations. Also, we have our youth team on that side of the house as well. A youth team, we have a youth officer and a social worker, and they're responsible for our diversion program. A lot of our youth, as they come through the door, those under the age of 18, were mandated by the Youth Justice Act to defer those that when it's appropriate, to help not bring them through the court system, but defer them. And we have contracts with them, and some of that will include them doing volunteer services and so on. And we keep tabs on them and those things. And the majority of the time, we don't see those kids back again after they've been through that diversion program, which is a good thing. Also, under that youth team, we have our high school liaison officer. We have 3 high school liaison officers in the town of Oakville. They divide up all the high schools in Oakville, and they're responsible for investigating any incidents that happen within the high schools, as well as building a relationship and bonding with those students and being available for students in the high school to approach them. And later on in the presentation, I'll speak to a couple of programs that they actually involved with in the high school. I think everybody will agree it's an important follow-up to our DARE program, which is in the grade schools, our Motivate program, which is in the grade schools, and then we continue that on with the high school liaison officers in the high schools. Community policing teams, how we police the town of Oakville. You see a map there, as you're all very familiar with, the town of Oakville. We have the town of Oakville divided up into 4 communities: Trafalgar, Oakville East, Oakville West, and Palermo. In the town, it's also divided up into 15 policing zones. And we staff those zones or deploy officers into those zones based on calls for service, based on officer safety needs, as well as we like to keep officers in those zones, community police officers, community officers we call them, keep them in their, working in their community areas so they get to know the people in the communities, get to know the community, and that's very important. Each staff sergeant, I mentioned there's 4 staff sergeants that command the policing platoons. Not only are they in charge of their particular specific platoon, but they're also assigned a specific team area. And you'll see some of those boundaries somewhat simulate the boundaries for town council as well in the different wards. And so they're responsible for community and quality life issues within their team area. You may have corresponded with me in regards to different incidents or issues within your own wards, and a lot of times you'll see when I return the email that I have passed it on to a certain staff sergeant. That staff sergeant will be the staff sergeants that are responsible for the policing community in that area, and we try and get them engaged in coming up with solutions, looking at the issues and coming up with solutions, and working with yourself and your constituents to come up with solutions to those quality of life issues. Another thing that patrolling with a purpose, one of the things I always say to my officers is that every turn you make while you're out there patrolling, it should be for a reason. You should be patrolling with a purpose. So if you're going to turn down Trafalgar Road, why are you turning down Trafalgar Road at 4 o'clock? Why are you driving down that road? Well, that's based on crime and traffic stats. I have a meeting every week, every Monday, and I call it my weekly crime briefing. And utilizing our crime analysts, we go through a number of stats. We look at our total calls for service, how it compares to last week. This is an example. This is a couple of weeks ago. An example, I can quickly look at a glance, keep my finger on the pulse in regards to calls for service. How are we compared to last year in overall calls? Then you'll see down the left side under categories, those are major issues or major call categories that I look at on a weekly basis. And I can tell how many there was for the week, which was the busiest team area, which you saw, which busiest community, what percent of that crime, of the district crime happened in that community, what was the previous week, what was the same time last year, what was the number, total year-to-date compared to the total year-to-date last year, and then they call it my up and down chart there. It tells me at a glance if it's up or down and where we compare. Now I look at these stats to, and you'll see on the next slide, we use these stats and we also look at hotspot mapping. So what we do with this hotspot mapping and all these stats is try and put our officers in the right place at the right time to be successful. And these tools help us to do that. This one here happens to be a 916, which is what we call a theft from auto. We have a lot of theft from autos, and I'm sure you've heard of them through your constituents. I see some of you smiling. And so we try and develop those hot spots. And as a result of that, we'll deploy officers, we'll deploy our strategic support team, which is a team of plainclothes officers that we have to deal with community concerns. We'll deploy them. They're very flexible. We deploy them at certain locations during certain times to hopefully make ourselves successful in capturing or people responsible for those quality of life concerns. So I just wanted to show you a couple of those things just to show you how we operate within the district and how we try and stay ahead of crime trends and keep our fingers on the pulse. Here's some stats for you. You heard Deputy Chief Fletcher speaking about regional stats, and I just want to give you an idea of how we compare. When I say we, Oakville, I very much feel it's my community from a policing perspective. You'll see the different categories, but the main ones: violent crime, total violent crime there. Regional change from 2009 to 2010 to 3.7%. You'll notice that the change in Oakville was lower than that. It was 2.7%. So violent crime in Oakville was less than the regional difference. You'll go down to the other highlighted area, property crime. Property crime in the region between 9 and 10 went up 4.7%. We actually went up 0.7%. You look at total crime, in the region, it was 3.8%. It went up. Here in Oakville, it was down actually 0.04%. So we're doing well. Just a couple of major incidents, and the reason I'm bringing these major incidents to you is that even though we live in a very safe community, we still do have crime, and some of those crimes are very far-reaching. Majority of our major incidents are not as a result of residents of Oakville, but a lot of times are from surrounding communities, as well as around the province and around the country. A home invasion in March of 2010. This home invasion was, a family was overcome by physical force and armed suspects. They forced their way into the home and actually moved the family into a back room. Pieces of personal property were stolen, including the family vehicle. Investigation led us to the recovery of the vehicle and identified a number of suspects that were responsible, and it was quite a lengthy investigation. One of the parties has since been deported, another one has pled guilty, and there are still a couple that are still before the court. And this was, and I was speaking to Councillor Knowles a few minutes ago. We just promoted you. About home invasions. And here's an example here. This was as a result of a failed business relationship. We're lucky in the town of Oakville that we very rarely have a random home invasions. The majority of our home invasions that you may hear about are as a result of they know each other. It could be a failed business initiative like this, drug related, but they're generally known. So random home invasions, knock on wood, are very rare in the town of Oakville. Abduction of a 14-year-old female. Again, this wasn't, first when you hear abduction of a 14-year-old female, say, oh my God, but it was actually a situation where she left for school one morning and took off with her 21-year-old boyfriend. As a parent, you can understand how, how that would make you feel. But through great, great investigation, and the scope of this investigation actually led us working with 6 different provinces throughout the country, and within 6 days we were able to track this young lady and her boyfriend down and arrest and bring her boyfriend back and bring her home to her parents. But it seems the magnitude of crime these days, it's just getting more and more difficult. She was using a false name and so on and so forth, so it was quite an investigation. Project Nighthawk, back last year, between July and September of last year, we had a large number, 24 residential break-and-enters that were occurring overnight with people leaving their doors or windows unlocked. As a result of that, we identified through our crime briefings, we were able to identify that those numbers were going up, that they were nighttime break-and-enters. We made sure a press release was out right away to warn the public, but then we started working and using those hotspot mapping to try and put ourselves in the best place at the right time to catch the people responsible. And ultimately, we were able to do that, and we arrested three adult males and 6 youthful offenders, and they were from Hamilton, and they were ultimately responsible for 19 of the 24 entries here in Oakville, as well as 75 across the GTA. So another successful investigation. Explosive device is manufactured. Again, a very serious crime. We got a call to a residence by a complainant who advises he had found an explosive device in his front garden, and I'm sure some of you have read that in the media. As a result of investigations that went over, we utilized a number of our investigative units, including our explosive disposal unit, our forensic identification unit, worked with our arson unit, as well as the fire marshal's office. And we ultimately ended up charging this gentleman with a number of explosive firearms offenses and fraud-related offenses. So, but they're very complex. Convenience store robberies. We had a convenience store robbery in a Max Milk here, and it was a takeover-style robbery here in Oakville. And again, through investigative means, we were able to identify 4 suspects and a 5th in a getaway car. And after working with, again, Toronto and Peel Police, we were able to do search warrants, 5 simultaneous search warrants in the city of Toronto, and those search warrants led us to a number of other robberies that these people were responsible for in Halton, Peel, and Toronto. So it gives you an idea of how transient our crime is, and it's not just, it's very little of it's homegrown in regards to our major incidents. And then, of course, as the Deputy Fletcher mentioned, our homicides. We've had 2 here in Oakville so far this year. The one on Kerr Street that you're all aware of. One on Spears Road, the shooting on Spears Road, also in February. And then we've also had an attempt homicide, which was at Silaps just in March there. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude and type of crimes. Even though we are a very safe community, we still do have those crimes. Traffic concerns, that's near and dear to most of your hearts. That's, I'm sure, the majority of your phone calls. I know it's the majority of the emails I get from you in regards to traffic concerns. So I just wanted to give you this little chart, and it gives you an idea of the process that we go through when we get those concerns from you. And right off the bat, I want to ask you and encourage you, and I know you do, to encourage your constituents to call us directly. And not only just with traffic concerns, but I've got emails, and you've seen them, through you from constituents about something that's happened 2 or 3 days after they've happened. And it makes it a little more difficult for us to react on those. So I thank you, and I appreciate your efforts in trying to encourage those people to come directly to us and at the right time. So intake, we get that from a number of sources, through yourselves, through Road Watch, straight through from the public. And then we have what we have, a confirmation stage. And we utilize a number of different things. And some of you have got back some data from our Speed Sentry device. The Speed Sentry device that we have, that it does very much some of the work that your traffic department does. It takes speeds and those type, but we get to get it at quicker, a lot quicker. We deploy it right away. We get that information. We download it, and it helps us to determine if it is a real concern or a perceived concern. Because sometimes, especially in some of the developments around Oakville, where the houses are so close to the roadway, when you step out your front door and you're only 15 or 20 feet from the roadway, that 50 kilometers feels like 80 kilometers. So sometimes it is a perceived issue. But we use that to help confirm whether it's a perceived or real issue. We also use our COPS, which is our Citizens on Phone Patrol. They're civilians, they are volunteers that work with us, and we will give them our concerned or troubled areas, and they'll go out and try and confirm that. The problem is when we use a marked police car, we use a police car in a traffic concern area, it's skewed. Any feedback we get is skewed. Someone sees a police car, they're going to make sure they stop at that stop sign. They see a police car, they're going to slow down. So we'll out there and we're trying to confirm it with a marked or an unmarked car. It doesn't really matter. They all look like police cars, right? So it really skews. So that's why we're trying these other methods with our Citizens on Phone Patrol, as well as our Speed Sentry devices, to try and confirm and get some good data to see how we're going to deal with that. As a result of the data, then we move to the analysis stage, and that's we decide how we're going to deal with this, whether it's through enforcement, through its education, or engineering. Our district response unit sergeant deals with the town engineers on a frequent basis in regards to issues identified in regards to traffic. So we may decide that we're going to use enforcement or education. Obviously, we have no control over the engineering side of it. We'll do that for a period of time and then evaluate it and then maintain it. So if we've made a difference there over a week or a month's time, then we'll move away from it, but then we'll maintain it, go back occasionally, just so they don't know kind of when we're there or when we're not there, and maintain it. And while we're maintaining it, if we see it's going up again, then we evaluate it, see if so it'll just loop back in again. But we try and deal with those the best we can. Enforcement activities, just some numbers from 2009 to 2010, the changes. So you'll see there impaired 91, and this is just for the town of Oakville, 91 in 2009, 119 in 2010, a change of 28. And then you'll see the last column, which is your first quarter of 2010 versus first quarter of 2011. And we have an actual decrease of 16.1. Now, when we say that, that's apprehended impaired drivers. So our apprehension is down from, that's not saying there's less impaired drivers, our apprehension is down. Temporary license suspensions, you'll see the numbers there, first quarter of 10 to 11, down 3.8. Motor vehicle collisions. Motor vehicle collisions, as you saw from my up-down chart earlier there, seems to be our one of our major concerns in Oakville. A lot of reasons for that. A lot of it's congestion, some of it's construction, some of it is people just in a hurry, trying to get home, running that red light, driving a little too fast, not paying attention. Cell phones. We had a cell phone blitz a few months ago. And I think in a day we wrote over 80 cell phone distracted driver charges. Those continue to be out there. And when you get on a road like Trafalgar Road, you get down near Cross Avenue at 5 o'clock in the evening, you don't have a lot of time to react. So if you happen to look down at your BlackBerry or your cell phone that split second and someone stops in front of you, crash. And that's as easily as it happens. And I really contribute a lot of those accidents to that itself. Our personal injury accidents are up as well, not by a lot, but by 6. Fatal collisions, they were the same in 2009, 2010. Total collisions we're up 92, and we have a 29% increase from the first quarter of 2010 to 2011. Our PONs was our provincial offense notices, tickets that we give out. You'll see the numbers there. We had a decline in those tickets of 128 over 2009, 2010, but you see there's been a 51% increase in 2011, the first quarter of 2011. And that's as a result of a traffic initiative that has been initiated by the service, keeping in mind of our accidents going up and those things. So, and the surveys, our number one concern is traffic. So the provincial offense notices have increased considerably. Community safety and involvement. We get involved with our community. Some of you may have heard of the bicycle repair and placement program. One of our village constables is very active in this, and he works with getting bicycles, used bicycles, getting volunteers to help him, getting donations in regards to repairing these bicycles, and working with underprivileged children and giving them bicycles. That's a very successful program, and has, has won some awards. Project Last Call, Project Last Call it's targeted towards our licensed establishments here in the town of Oakville. It's enforcing the Liquor License Act. We conduct inspections. We work with the AGCO, the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario, as well as sometimes with our fire department. We randomly go into licensed facilities or licensed establishments to make sure that they're following the Liquor License Act. And we do that randomly. They don't know when we're coming, and there's been a number of license suspensions and so on as a result of that. Project Walkway, it's a program that's initiated through our high school liaison officers. This is a program where high school liaison officers, and again, I'm sure some of you hear about this, is around schools, around kids hanging around schools, in the walkways around schools, whether it's smoking marijuana or drinking. And believe it or not, this happens before school a lot of the times. So our officers, our high school liaisons officers, randomly pick different schools and go out in old clothes before classes start, and they try and deter these kids from doing these activities before school. But they'll also identify these kids to the school. So the school, we charge some. Some others, the school suspension takes over there. So the school is involved, and we work with the schools to deter that type of activity. Our HERO program, our high enforcement repeat offenders. What we do with this program is we monitor compliance with our offenders on various forms of court order release while they reside in our community. We have an officer who's responsible for managing this, and he deals with probation and parole. We identify a number of these individuals that are out and that are of high risk. And we go and knock on their doors. And it's a proactive initiative, and we go and knock on the doors to make sure that they're in when they're supposed to be in, that they're not drinking when they're not supposed to be drinking, and all those things. And we really feel that helps us with our reduction in crime, because we don't have those people out there reoffending, because they know we're going to come knocking. And if we come knocking and they're not abiding by their conditions, then we're going to arrest them, bring them back into court. So it's a very worthwhile program. Ride 101 you may have heard of, again, an award-winning initiative by Halton Regional Police, where we go into the schools in regards to drinking and driving. Our high school liaison officers go in, they use the vision goggles, they let the kids try the vision goggles on and try and walk with them on, educate them in regards to the dangers of drinking and driving, not only drinking and driving, but also utilizing drugs and driving, and the combination of both. Very good program. Safe Start is something we initiated a few years ago. This is about in September when school's back in. We start off usually the week before school's in, and we increase our visibility in the school areas and enforcement in the school areas. And then the first day of school is we have a major blitz. And actually all the senior officers, even the deputy chief was out last year on the first day of school, and even ourselves are out enforcing infractions in and around school areas. So it's that awareness piece, and if we can save one child as a result of that, it's all worthwhile. Safe Prom, another program that started just in the last couple of years, and again, it's encouraging kids to be safe. There's a lot of tragedy, a lot of high-risk behavior that occurs in and around prom time. Unfortunately, we've all been there, and the kids feel indestructible at that age. And sometimes, for some of them, it's their first experience with, experiencing with alcohol and so on. So we get out there and we're trying to promote not only to the kids themselves, but the parents. And for the parents to help guide and mentor the kids in regards to getting through that happy stage of their life without a tragedy. Road Watch, everyone knows about Road Watch. Civilians, our community has an opportunity to go online if they see something and they see someone driving too fast, driving erratically or so on, and provide a license plate number, and then we will do the rest. And we send a letter out to the individual basically saying, you've been observed doing this. This is an offense under the Highway Traffic Act, just so they know somebody's watching. Neighborhood Watch, we have a number of Neighborhood Watch communities. It's changed over the years. It's not the phone tree anymore. It's by email and so on, but we try and, whichever neighborhoods want to get involved, and we try and keep them up to date on information that's going on in their community. Major events, major and minor events, as you know, we have a number of events throughout the year. Road races, Canada Day, Santa Claus Parade, and many more. Our Waterfront Festival is no longer, but it was a huge event. And we work through the year with the town to ensure that all special events are run safely and that there is little disruption as possible to the community. So that's it. Might have been a little longer than it should have been, but any questions? My backup's here. Questions?
Well, as a matter of fact, you did attract a question from Councillor Elgar and from Councillor Kahn, Councillor Robinson. Anybody else? Well, there's three to start with. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. One of the biggest concerns in Oakville seems to be speeding. And a few years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago now, Halton Regional Police came out with something called a speed eye. And I was just wondering when it was going to be implemented in your district, because I think that would be an excellent tool that we could move around Oakville.
Yeah, we've taken on the Speed Sentry. It's a very similar type of product. The difference, the Speed Eye is a huge apparatus. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a huge apparatus that is moved around on a trailer, and it sits on the side of the road, and it does very much the same thing that the Speed Sentry does, except for it'll take pictures, and it sends road watch letters as a result. And we've just decided to go with the Speed Sentry. It's easier to move around. It gives us data quickly, and it's just a decision that we've made within the district. And it's the Speed Eye is a very expensive piece of equipment when you include the billboard, the trailer, and those type of things. And we've thought to try the Speed Sentry instead.
Can you just explain a little bit more about how the Speed Sentry works? Does it take a picture of the license plate? That's the key, because if you're trying to do it physically, a person tries to do it, they're blowing by you and you can't get it written down.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It just gives us speeds, and it gives us percentage of percentiles, how many vehicles travel through, and so what we use it for is a confirmation stage, not necessarily an education stage. There's still a lot, it's very labor intensive still, because that information has to be downloaded and manually then put into a computer to find out who the registered owners are, and then letters sent out. So there's still a fair bit of resources required to utilize that.
Is anyone in Halton still using that Speed Eye? Because if they're not, maybe we could move it to Oakville to try
No,
it.
it is being used still in the north end, in the Georgetown Milton area, and it is available to us on loan if we choose to use it.
I appreciate that. I'd like to try it someday.
The other device that we have, it's a roving vehicle, is called the ALPR. It's a license plate recognition vehicle, and it's a van that's equipped with a number of cameras, so it's very similar to what you're talking about with the Speed Eye. And what it's doing is it's actually, in a millisecond, recording license plates of offending vehicles. So if there's, say, a stolen vehicle or a vehicle being operated by a past impaired driver, it identifies for it very quickly. It runs a license plate, and it notifies the officer, so they can then have an officer pull that vehicle over or take some affirmative action. The Speed Sentry device is being used it's being used here, and it's being used in Burlington for the same purpose, to give us the analysis. But what we found is that although that camera and that picture takes a great picture and it sends it out, it's really no more an enhancement than our Road Watch program. And you cannot get the benefit that you would get from a police officer taking that analysis, taking that data, and actually doing some enforcement and having that personal touch where they stop the vehicle, give the ticket, and give the offense notice. So even though they may be getting a letter from the Speed Eye, they're not getting the actual ticket for it. So,
Is it possible that councillors could get like a speed gun? So if there is a lot of residents complaining, you could actually check the speed that their cars are going and then send it in to you? Like, there's a real issue in certain areas, and there's not enough police to go around all of Oakville.
We have our cops volunteers have a radar message board that they use. Again, the problem is when you set that up, you get it skews the results. And this is where the Speed Sentry, so we've used it in a number of your complaints and provided we can put it on a pole, and it takes that, gets all that information for it. We can put it on north and south, east or west, whatever, and we can download that data almost instant. We can leave it overnight, we can leave it 24 hours, whatever, and we get the same information that we would if you stood there with the speed gun, and there's less chance of that information being skewed. It's going to be real data.
Councillor Khan?
Thank you very much. I get the feeling that Councillor Elgar wants a speed gun so he can measure how fast he can throw a baseball right now. I go to schools on a weekly basis, and whether it's a civics class or sort of career day, and when I leave, I always tell them a little bit about, solicitor-client privilege and the fact that I'm a lawyer, and if they need to call me, they can call me. And I do get students calling me on a weekly basis with, various issues, and they're kind of, they feel safe speaking to me because I'm not going to go and talk to their teachers or their parents. One of the biggest concerns I've recognized is that the pervasiveness of drugs in schools. I had a student who called me, he was 13 years old, and he was scared to go to school because he owed one of the drug pushers $200. It's becoming a huge problem. So how will our force work on that? And where does the law now stand with the right to privacy with respect to going into students' lockers and inspecting their knapsacks and their personal items?
Unfortunately, we used to do that. We used to bring drug tracking dogs into the school, but we are no longer allowed to do that.
Case law from the West Coast.
Yeah. Case law from the West Coast that no longer allows us to do that. Even though the locker is school property, we cannot do that. I don't know if Deputy wants to.
The law that was actually struck, and it came out, we used to do this approximately 7 years ago. We were actually one of the initiating services in the country to do it. And we would send it, we would work with the school entitled that the property was theirs, and they would work with the police on consent to bring us in. A case was heard, not out of this jurisdiction, but another jurisdiction out west, where they determined that they had a right of privacy to that locker and the contents of the locker. So although it's school property, once they put their lock on it, it becomes school property, and it's an invasion of privacy for us to bring a dog in and indicate. And the case was actually where the dog indicated in a backpack, and then it was considered an infringement of the person's rights because it was a backpack in a hallway and so on and so forth. So even then, it was a more public venue, but the law was struck that tool down for us. We still do a lot of work, and our high school and liaison officers are working with the school authorities because, again, what we're trying to identify is work with the good kids in the school, the kids that, as you've talked about, Councillor, that will come to us and say, you need to know about this, and then we can then target that enforcement on that individual. We spend an awful lot of time tracking the bad kids and looking for the drug dealers and the drug users in the school. They're more covert. The good kids and the kids that are, as you say, that may have dabbled in a little bit are the ones that we need to be talking to. And we're really encouraging our high school liaison officers to be an intelligence officer, not necessarily an enforcement officer all the time, but to go out there and build those relationships with the students and get to know them. I've had kids in the system growing up. I've got a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old, and we often talked about who they would go to within the school. And sadly enough, it was the janitor or the school support agency within the school. They didn't know to contact their police officer, and we're really trying to encourage those kids, starting right with the DARE program, to let them know the police are their friend. They can talk to us and point things out to us. And then once we get that individual, we do target the individual. A lot of times it's happening after school or off school property, so we're not infringing the rights of the individual. And we do continue to do through our drug bureau a number of undercover drug stings. It's getting tougher and tougher to get kids into a school environment and a police officer in that environment.
So am I just relying on anecdotal evidence, or would you agree with me that this is becoming a bigger problem in our schools these days?
From my personal experience, and I had the luxury of working in drugs and morality for 5 years, I don't know that the problem has really increased. I think it's maybe anecdotal. I don't think any one school is any worse than any other school. I think the prevalence of drugs and the availability of drugs continue to be a problem in our society. It's an acceptance that the concern is the seriousness of the types of drugs we're seeing, whether we're starting to see pills and ecstasy and those sort of prescription drugs. We're starting to see some of those, and that gives us concern. I don't know that we've seen an increase in the use. I think in my time, again, working in drugs and morality, the kids want to dabble in it. We have some serious drug dealers in our area, and we were talking about it earlier, just one of the cases we had, the president of the Hells Angels chapter living in our own jurisdiction. Typically they don't dabble in their own backyard, but that does equate to some drug activity, which we're on top of that. We're starting to see an increase in gang activity coming into the region, and our drugs and gangs and guns unit are on top of those guys all the time.
Just a quick follow-up to that is I saw about a year and a half ago and had some concern about the number of unconditional releases that I was seeing coming by my desk in regards to drug situations. Officer may find a youth with a small amount of drug, and instead of charging that youth, they would release them unconditionally. As a result of that, we started a zero tolerance in regards to youth and drug offenses. We don't necessarily charge them. We actually charge a very small percentage of them, depending on if they've been stopped before. But what we're encouraging our officers to do is bring them through the diversion program and through our youth office. And the main reason for that is to let them know that it's not acceptable. And my opinion is when we utilize an unconditional release, we're saying that it's acceptable. It's still against the law. And that when we bring them through the youth program or the youth diversion program, what we do is then we get the parents involved. So a lot of times the parents have no idea because the kid's been stopped on the side of the road. He's got a little bit of drugs. It's been seized. The person's been released unconditionally, and the parents don't know. So what we're encouraging our officers to do now is, in fact, follow through with that and call the parents, bring them through the diversion program, and sit down with the parents and the individual youth and draw up a contract. And sometimes that may mean that this kid does have at a young age, may have a drug dependency, but then we have referrals. We can refer them to not only the individual, but the family to counseling, and it seems to be helping. I've got some really good information from our feedback that a lot of these kids that we put through these programs are not coming back. We're not seeing them again. So it is one thing that we're trying to do, realizing that, in fact, drugs is a problem with our youth, and concerning even the age of the youth. They're younger, a lot younger. You're getting kids 14, 15 years old with drugs. So.
Thank you, Superintendent. Councillor Robinson has questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Superintendent, a while ago, my God, my voice is bad tonight. I don't know if I get a drink here. Must have had something to do with being up late last night. A little while ago, Sergeant Williams did a sentry on Great Lakes Boulevard. I think you knew that. Mm-hmm. Subsequent to that, he said he was then going to proceed to do something else, following up additionally with some types of control. And I don't know what that was. Do you?
Not right off the top of my head there, Councillor. I can get back to you on that. I remember the issue. There were some issues down in that area. I can't recall how it was resolved or what actually took place, but I can make sure that Sergeant Williams gets back to you.
I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
Second question. We were told a while ago, I believe, that Bronte Road and Rebecca had the greatest incidence of accidents in Oakville. Why is that? Is there something wrong with that intersection?
You know, it's again, it did for a period of time. It was identified through our weekly crime briefings as one of the larger areas for accidents. Whether it's speed, the amount of traffic that goes through there. As we get the resources, we try and look at the causation of these accidents, whether there are people running red lights, whether they're inattentive drivers. When we look at the causation of these accidents, it can help identify that, and we're in the process of doing that. We just finished doing that with all our accidents down Trafalgar Road, and it showed us that the majority of them were low-speed impacts, and they were as a result of pushing lights, trying to run lights.
So there's nothing the town needs to do then to change?
It may very well. I'm sure the town is, can look at that as well. And between the two of us, through enforcement, whether there's engineering issues, that's yet to be seen. But it has been identified from our perspective as one of the higher accident areas in town.
So if you need the town to get involved, you'll make that approach?
Our district response unit, Sergeant Craddock, definitely works with the town to do whatever they can.
No. Oh, thanks, Dave. A while ago you mentioned hotspots, and you showed us a map. There were some red dots and blue dots. What's the difference?
Okay, we look at I can't remember which color. The blue are 30 days. So when I look at those maps, I asked for them to look for crime trends. I look at 30 days and over the last 7 days. So what I'm looking at to see if there's any trending, but then is it continuing? So over the last 30 days, this is where all those theft from autos took place. Over the last 7 days, this is where they took place. Is there any overlapping? Are they still going on there? A lot of times, especially with theft from autos, you'll have some kids walk down a street and just do multiple theft from autos. So you can't just go on necessarily the straight numbers. You have to look at how many incidents and those type of things. So to really develop a crime trend, you have to bring it out a bit further and look at that 30 days. And then I also do hotspot mapping quarterly, so you can get a better idea of trends.
Is it easy for you to put that acetate up again right now.
We go back. There it is, right there.
You see that one down at the very bottom left-hand corner?
The little blue dot down there?
Yeah, what is that?
That is identifying a location where there was a theft from auto. One incident. And you see how there's much more blue dots because it's over a 30-day time period, and then the red dots are over the last 7 days.
So the blue dot is 30 days. Okay, thanks.
Okay?
If I can just one other issue, that we do try and push our officers not just to look at these from an enforcement capacity, but we send out our community liaison officers to look at it from a preventative measure as well. And we continue to look at lock it or lose it programs and encouraging people to lock their cars. A lot of these crimes are crimes of opportunity where people leave their car in their driveway, they don't lock their driver's doors, and as Superintendent Powers just alluded to, kids walk down the street and up and down a driveway checking door handles so they find something and they take the change or they take a devices sitting on the dashboard or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of measures that can be taken. We encourage our officers to get out there in the community and enforce those preventative measures.
And one more question for the Deputy Chief. You said, and we're very proud of this, that the region of Halton is 3 years in a row the safest region in Canada. But we've also heard, going back to previous chiefs, that the region of Halton, over a continuous period of time, has that honor. So I'm sure there's much more than 3 years that this has been the safest region in Canada. Can you comment on that?
I can. From a statistical point, we have been recognized as being one of the safer communities. We've always been in, I believe, the top 10. As the last 3 years, we've been recognized by Maclean's Magazine as being within the top 3 municipalities and the top region within all of Canada. So that's what we continue to support, is that we are the top safest region in all of Canada for the last 3 years.
Thank you very much for everything you do, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you, Worship. You put the map up here, and you noticed we were sort of smiling when we saw that what appears to be a giant tomato floating in Ward 5. It seems to be right over Councillor Grant's house, so that's why we were smiling. We weren't making light of the fact that people are having their cars broken into. So if you want me to make a citizen's arrest, I'm happy to help. My question, I have a couple questions. The first one relates to the conversation that we just had about drugs and youth. So first of all, I just want to clarify, because we always, I find, I spent a long time in health and social services at the region. We talk a lot about illicit drug use at health and social services, and I find that every time we get into this conversation, we talk a lot about youth and drugs, youth and drugs, youth and drugs, and it sounds like the problem is always just the youth. So I just want to clarify, just for the record, where Town TV's listening, the media are here, the drug problem, if we have a problem, is not just the youth. It's across all demographics, correct?
Yes, and I think when I speak of youth, and one of the reasons I speak of youth, and one of the reasons I pushed officers to zero tolerance on that, because I think we have an opportunity to change that. We have an opportunity to change the adult lifestyle, or whatever that may be, that if we can get to them early and show them that it's not acceptable and the dangers of drugs, we have a better chance of reducing the adult drug use. And
is it fair to suggest that by recognizing the fact that it is adults, that there's a way to potentially impact youth? Because when youth will often model after adults, and if they see that, for example, casual marijuana use is, hey, that's okay, you know, my dad does it, my uncle does it, so it must be okay for me. So if we need to keep that front and center as well.
Yeah, and you know what, I totally agree, and I think there's a number, or a portion of society out there where there is drug use and it's prevalent within the house, whether it's adult and kids, and you're absolutely right. Kids are going to model those adults.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. I just wanted to, I want to talk about marijuana a little bit. One of the things that I learned again, at Health and Social Services of the region, we had the annual youth drug study, I think it's called. I can't remember the name of the study. You're probably familiar with it. But one of the things that we saw over the years is that the use of harder drugs seemed to be trending down amongst youth, and marijuana was almost out of control, it seemed. Is that what you're seeing as well? Are those statistics similar to what you're seeing in terms of enforcement?
I think, and I'll let the deputy speak from a regional perspective, but I think you're starting to see some of the other drugs and the harder drugs, but the affordability of some of those drugs. OxyContin is one of those oxys. We've had a number of robberies and break-ins through Oakville itself in regards to those pills. They're very affordable. They're easy to conceal. Where marijuana isn't so easy to conceal, and everyone knows what it is. Someone has some oxy in their in a pill bottle. It's much easier to conceal, and it is affordable.
And sometimes those Oxycontins and some of those drugs are actually prescription drugs. They might be in the medicine cupboard and somebody is making other use of them, right? In terms of marijuana, though, that's one thing I wanted to talk about because we had a long conversation over a couple meetings about how do we deal with marijuana, because I alluded to the fact a moment ago that there seems to be almost prevailing attitude amongst young people that, it's okay, it's not going to do any long-term damage. The medical officer of health seems to turn red and get quite agitated when he hears that kind of thing. But that seems to be what I hear. I mean, I have 5 kids and 4 of them have been teens and have gone through those years. And I mean, I heard that in my own house when, the kids would come home. How do you respond to that, and how do you deal with that kind of attitude, and what is the police department doing when it comes to addressing marijuana?
It still is an offense, and it's not something that's been legalized as of yet, and hopefully it never does. And I agree with you that and I'm not a medical expert, but that it does lead to harder substance abuse.
Yes, if I could, we continue to work through a number of provincial initiatives. We have members of our police service representative on the different Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police committees. One of them is specific to drug use. As Superintendent Powers alluded to, I echo his comments. I hope that it never is legalized. I think it leads to a number of behaviors that, and to your point, we are seeing that in older adults and in family behaviors. We hear that loud and clear from our students in the DARE program when we're giving them a message about making the right choices, and they say, well, their parents are using. So they are going to model that behavior. I think we need to continue to recognize it as being a serious offense. I know Superintendent Power has done that in his jurisdiction here in Oakville. We do it through the region where we, whether it's a small amount of marijuana or a large amount, the offenders are treated the same. And we're encouraging officers to make sure that arrest is made, make sure they are taken back to their parents, make sure they're put through a diversion if it's appropriate, and if not, to charge them and put them before the courts. And that's the way that the behavior is going to be changed, is by continued. Years ago when seatbelts came out and the laws around seatbelts came out, it wasn't the norm to wear your seatbelt. And through campaign after campaign after campaign, it became acceptable behavior, that the carnage that was being created by not wearing your seatbelt and the impact to social services and health services was going to have an impact as if we didn't change it. So I think it's just going to be a continued chipping away, and we need to get the government behind us to lobby and continue to accept that it is a serious offense and cannot be legalized.
2 more quick questions on marijuana, and then I'll get off the subject. In terms of driving offenses, driving while under the influence, is marijuana, is that something that you're seeing a lot more of, or are you seeing marijuana or other drugs where people are driving not just under the influence of alcohol, but driving under the influence of drugs? And how do you catch that? I mean, with alcohol, I mean, it's a breathalyzer or blood tests in extreme circumstances, but how would you catch that other than somebody rolling down the window, a big cloud of smoke comes out of the car? But how do you deal with that?
We actually have there's a program called the DRE, which is a Drug Recognition Expert Program. That's actually been initiated by the RCMP a number of years ago. Officers are actually sent to training to a prison in the States where they observe behavior of drug users and the physical demeanor, and they actually develop an expertise on how to look for those behaviors. You have to have grounds to take blood, so it's not as simple as just saying I suspect somebody has marijuana in their system and drawing blood from them. So you have to, it's a very detailed analysis, has to be done by an expert. We are just in the process right now of training up, I believe it's 3 of our officers, 1 that's taken a lead on it, 3 within the region to become experts in that field, so that we can, because we are starting to see some of those trends. It's not just alcohol, but a combination of alcohol and drugs.
And right now, even though we don't have any of those drug recognition officers, we do have a memo of understanding with the Peel, and I believe also with Go Police. They do have them, and they share them with us, so we have the ability to call them out when we suspect, and we have had a couple in the town of Oakville itself.
Okay, and last marijuana question. A few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, it seemed that every week we were picking up the Beaver or the Oakville Today and reading about another a grow op. You know, another house has been destroyed by grow ops, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of marijuana being pulled out, hydro being stolen, the whole bit. I haven't heard much about this recently in town. Is this trending down?
We've seen a trend recently, a downward trend within the town of Oakville. Unfortunately, in our northern area, we've seen an increased trend going up again. And it seems to be an ebb and flow as enforcement. For every enforcement measure that we take, unfortunately, the bad guys seem to learn those and try and put a different, and with the increase of different filtering systems and light coverage devices, they're getting trickier to identify. What has really helped us is the work by the hydro commissions and the theft of hydro offenses that are now occurring, and they are being treated seriously. So they're not seeming to be as prevalent as they used to be, but it may be that we're just not detecting them.
And I think we're in the north end, as the deputy mentioned, we're starting to see more outdoor grows than residential.
Well, it is an agricultural area. My last comment is we've heard over the years, and I know Chief Gary and Chief Ian before were very much in favor of this and lobbying for it at the province, and that is the return of photo radar, residential or urban photo radar as opposed to highway. Is there any progress on that?
I can tell you that as recent as last week, we continue to discuss with the board other traffic initiatives that we can take, whether it be red light cameras or photo radar. There doesn't seem to be an appetite with the province right now to re-implement photo radar. There does seem to be an appetite right now for red light cameras, so it's something we will continue. We're always looking for the greatest use of technology to enhance our enforcement measures. So.
There is definitely a difficulty in doing red light enforcement, especially at a very congested intersection. Sometimes we just cause more problems than we solve by being there. So, just one comment I do want to make back on the youth and the drug issue. One program that is an expensive program to run, but I think very worthwhile, is the DARE program. The DARE program in our grade schools, and that's where we have to hit them hard and hit them off, and as these kids grow up, they're going to hopefully grow up with the understanding of the drug use.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to throw in somehow, find a wedge that would say our cops are tops, so I'll just say it randomly. You did a great job, and we appreciate the report. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Perhaps you would like to move receipt of the report. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? On behalf of Council, thank you very, very much for a very interesting and edifying presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll give your top performance marks to the chief when I see him.
Thank you.